I think the reason that the Fantastic Four are landing near Wakanda and Talokan. Hey everybody, Colton here, and the fourth teaser for Avengers Doomsday has arrived, and it features Shuri's Black Panther, King Mbaku, Namor, and Ben Grimm's The Thing. Now, I've gotten a lot of questions sent in wanting me to talk about the trailer, so I went through the mailbag, I went through Twitter, I went through the YouTube comments, and I picked this one from Neil. So, Neil writes, the fourth Doomsday teaser has dropped, and it looks like the Wakandans and the Fantastic Four are in the void. Does this confirm the multiverse collapses in Doomsday? Okay. Let me piss in your punch for a second, my friend. I'm so sorry, and thank you for sending in the question, Neil, but I really don't think this is the void. Sure, at first glance, yeah, it does resemble the desert setting that we saw in Deadpool and Wolverine, but it also looks almost identical, I think, to the desert where Shuri and Namor fought in Wakanda Forever. Now, we actually did discuss the leaks for this teaser a day or two ago. But the leaks, they were only half right. The idea of the trailer, like what it would be, that was accurate. The characters it would include and all of that. But the images floating around, those were not real. They were like AI generated or something like that. So anyway, the teaser opens with Shuri, Black Panther, talking about losing her brother and her mother, saying that she's lost everyone she cares about, which it's kind of odd when little T'Challa Jr.'s out there, but I get what she's saying. And she's also talking about like her role as Black Panther, and we get reminded of how she like turned down the king or queen role for Wakanda, kind of similar to what Thor did, you know, turning down the king of Asgard role. Anyway, she is talking about how a king's role is to prepare their people for the afterlife. And that framing, it sounds to me like she is saying that Mbaku, the king of Wakanda, Namor, the king of Talokan, I'm kind of getting the impression that she feels that they have accepted that Doomsday is coming and that the end of their world is inevitable and that it is their responsibility as kings to bring peace to their people. But Shuri's perspective is different because remember, she didn't think that she needed to be the queen of Wakanda. She felt Mbaku was the better fit for that. But she did feel that she was ready to take on the role of Black Panther. And I think that's right, because she's a fighter. She's perhaps an Avenger. And I think she believes her role is to fight, to protect the people of Wakanda, and not to, like, surrender to fate. Like, keep fighting no matter what. And I think that ideological clash, I guess you could say, I think it's important to what we are going to be getting in this movie, because what are the Avengers if not like heroes who just can't live with their own failure, to quote Thanos? I mean, in Infinity War, they got their ass kicked and then they bounced back. In Endgame, they refused to accept defeat. And with Shuri going down that same path as Black Panther, it's going to make her a great fit, I think, for the Avengers. Now, with them being in the desert, this is where things get interesting. I'm assuming that the reason that we are seeing Ben Grimm here in the desert with Mbaku and Shuri, I think this is where the Fantastic Four rocket that we saw in the post-credit scene of Thunderbolts, I think this is where the rocket ends up landing. Now, I originally thought that the Fantastic Four would arrive in New York. Reason being that, well, they're from New York in their universe, so I figured they might come to the New York of this Earth, this universe. Plus, that's where the Thunderbolts or the new Avengers are based at Avengers Tower. We saw that whole rocket tease at the end of Thunderbolts, kind of implying that the two teams were going to meet. So I was thinking New York, Avengers Tower. But instead, it's looking like they touched down near Wakanda and Talokan, prompting both kingdoms and their leaders to respond. And that's when we get Mbaku meeting the Thing, which is just... it's so cool. It's so cool. You know, at first, I thought this grouping of the Wakandans and the Talokan and the Fantastic Four, I thought that was a little odd, but it really isn't. Black Panther and Namor, you know, these are two characters who were introduced in Fantastic Four comics. You know, for these teasers, Steve Rogers and Thor, they can carry solo teasers on their own. I'm not sure that a Wakanda, like Black Panther, Talokan, Namor-centric teaser, or a Fantastic Four-centric teaser, like on their own, I don't know that individually they could have generated like the same level of hype as the Steve Rogers one, the Thor one, the X-Men one. But when you put them together, that classic MCU crossoverness that we all just love so much, and that gives that same vibe as when Thor met the Guardians for the first time, or when the Avengers assembled for the very first time. The crossover nature of this teaser makes it reach that same level as the Steve Rogers one, as the Thor one, as the X-Men one, because seeing these characters share the screen, that's the entire appeal, really, of the MCU, or one of the main appeals of the MCU. And I showed the trailer to my wife, who hadn't heard about any of the leaks or anything. She was watching it, and she smiled when Black Panther showed up, and Mbaku, and Namor, of course. But when Mbaku meets the Thing, when it cuts to Mbaku saying, I'm King Mbaku of Wakanda, and then the camera cuts to the Thing, my wife's jaw dropped. And I was just really glad to see that, because I wouldn't call my wife a casual fan. I mean, she's like pretty into the MCU and the X-Men and all that. Sees all the, Marvel movies with me, and she really enjoys them. But she's not quite as like plugged into it as we are. So seeing her have her jaw drop at that moment, when the Thing and Mbaku meet, and just reacting to the cool nature of that crossover nature of this whole thing, that was really good to see how someone who's not as plugged into it as we are would react to it. So that was really cool, and I think kind of supports my argument that having these two teams on their own might not have generated as much excitement for a teaser, but having them share the screen, that automatically puts them up there with the others. Now, I didn't do a reaction video because I had to watch the trailer for work and coordinate, with Ryan on the breakdown, and, discuss what we needed to put on it, and try to get it up pretty quick. And we did. It's up on Screen Crush right now, so be sure to go check it out. But one thing I mentioned in my notes when we were working on the breakdown, and full credit to Ryan, he wrote it, but we'll hop on calls, and I'll give my observations and stuff. I think the reason that the Fantastic Four are landing near Wakanda and Talokan in that desert by the two places is vibranium. That entire little region right there is rich with vibranium. And I think the signal that vibranium lets off is a signal that Reed Richards would be able to pick up on. And that was even kind of established in Fantastic Four First Steps, when he was able to pick up on like the energy signature of like the Silver Surfer. So I could see Reed like deducing, hey, let's go land there because that region is likely going to have the most advanced civilization on this planet. He might even be familiar with vibranium and in his own universe, on his own Earth, and know about, hell, he might know about Wakanda. If there's I don't think we saw Wakanda. Did we? No, there wasn't a Wakanda on the map in Fantastic Four First Steps. But that's the first time I'm thinking about that I don't know that Wakanda was on there. Anyway, he may be aware of like vibranium, and how like any civilization that gets their hands on vibranium is likely going to have really, really advanced tech, and it's that advanced tech that he's going to need to perhaps track down his son and figure out what's going on, like with the multiverse and all that. So with the four landing there, I think it naturally is going to draw like both teams of Avengers to that same location. And this could be where all of the heroes for the movie like converge, like possibly even Thor. We could see him do like another Infinity War superhero landing like he did in Wakanda in that movie. Now, if all the heroes come there, that would include Shang-Chi and maybe even Wong. And remember, in the post-credits scene for Shang-Chi, we saw that the 10 rings that Shang-Chi carries with him have a beacon within them. And that beacon now will likely be in Wakanda if they're all converging in Wakanda. And that could maybe even be what attracts Thor, because I think that beacon within the 10 rings is actually maybe like a distress signal or something coming from Loki. Now, while we're on the topic of our heroes being in Wakanda, I have said before that I think it's possible Doom is coming after Bob, aka Sentry, for his power, but Bob can't safely use his abilities to defend himself without the darker half, the Void, taking over. And that's why I think that Bob is going to be hidden not in Wakanda like Vision was with the Mind Stone when he was incapacitated and Thanos was coming after him. I think they're going to hide Bob down under the ocean in Talokan. Now, finally, I do want to return, Neil, to the part of your question about the Void. I don't think it's the Void. If this were the Void, I don't think Marvel would be showing it this early or even in the trailers, because I don't think our characters are going to end up in the Void until like the entire multiverse collapses, and that's when the void will really come into play. And I just realized I'm saying the void when I'm talking about Bob, and the void when I'm talking about the void at the end of time. The void is, of course, you guys know this, the darker half of the century, and there's another place called the void, which is the where everything it's the end of time. It's where if a universe dies or something, that's where everything lands. If it's not just completely disintegrated from reality. Anyway, I do think the void is likely going to be Battle World for Secret Wars, and that will serve as the primary location for Avengers Secret Wars, but not necessarily in Doomsday. But I could be totally wrong. Hell, half this movie might take place in Doomsday. Maybe the entire multiverse collapses in the first act. I don't know. Sorry if this video seems all over the place. I just wanted to hop on here and, talk about it because it was an exciting trailer. I just didn't have time to get to it today. But I wanted to hop on and get your thoughts on it because I just think it's super cool, super exciting. And I cannot wait to see what the 5th one is and the 6th one and perhaps the 7th one as we approach the Super Bowl, where we will get the full official Avengers Doomsday trailer. I hope. I think.